Here lies Weber Chapel, a beautiful building enriched by years of historical tradition. Since its construction in 1967, Weber Chapel has succeeded in promoting religious diversity in the midst of scientific and social advancement, and it continues to influence future Susquehanna graduates with its beauty. As we draw nearer to the 50th anniversary of this amazing chapel, it was paramount to reflect upon the impacts of Weber Chapel from the perspectives of those who knew it best. I proceeded to interview Scott Kirshner, Susquehanna University's current chaplain, about his experience with Weber Chapel and why he continues to preach within its walls.
Well, Chaplain Kirshner, it's nice to meet you.
Likewise, David.
I've always wondered about the history of Weber Chapel. I've been fascinated since my junior year, and I've even done video projects where I've canvassed the entire building. And I wanted to ask you a few questions since you know more about Weber Chapel, just being in it and
Sure.
preaching here for years. Tell me about your interest in Weber Chapel. What was it that made you want to come here in the first place?
Okay. Well, I didn't come here because of the building. I came here because of the people. I've been at Susquehanna just over 2 years, and I really wanted to be doing ministry in the context of higher education. And so this was a wonderful place to do that. And Weber Chapel is a place I discovered upon arriving. But it's a wonderful and interesting building. It's obviously the place where my office is, where I do a lot of things, such as lead services on Sunday morning. But there are lots of other things that happen at Weber because it's a multi-use building. And that also is, I think, very interesting and a very important part of what Weber's all about.
Neat. What do you know about the history of Weber Chapel? What did you know coming in, and what do you know now?
Mm-hmm. Well, I knew nearly nothing coming in, but Weber has a pretty interesting history in that almost immediately upon being built, it was something of a dinosaur. And the reason for that is that it was built for a time when there was mandatory daily chapel, and the same year that the building opened, mandatory daily chapel ended. So the purpose for which it was built, it was basically not used for from the beginning. Another aspect of that is that it was built to be able to seat the entire student body for events like commencement, etc. And it wasn't long after it was built that the student body size grew so that it wasn't any longer even able to seat the entire student body. So it was a little bit of a dinosaur immediately upon being built, but it continues obviously to be a useful building for us and used for many things daily, but never quite used for what it was built for.
I remember my history teacher telling me stories about Gustave Weber and just Weber Chapel in general, and how mandatory chapel was one thing the students hated because it was just so extreme and required of every student. And it got to the point where the class of 1968 kind of revolted and made a lot of social changes and progresses that we now have at this university. One of the things I've learned about Weber Chapel is it's very unique. There's a recording studio that's downstairs. You have a dance studio that's just off the left and into the dark corner, and you have a reflection room much like this one right here.
Sure.
What is it that you like the most about Weber Chapel, in comparison, preaching here versus a traditional chapel?
Sure. Well, I think the fact that Weber is used for a great many different activities, not only explicitly religious activities, I think is very theologically interesting. Because as I understand the gospel message and as I really think theologically, that the gospel message is one of good news for the world in the midst of real life. And so that sacred activities or faith matters ought not be segmented off in one sort of compartment of life, but that they ought be integrated into the whole of life as we know it and live it.
Okay.
And I think that's kind of expressed and lived out in the way in which Weber is used for many, many things.
That's interesting. My church does that a lot. We're what we call progressively conservative. I grew up in a church that mainly sung hymns, and now we sing contemporary music. And we kind of go back and forth every now and then, depending on the leader. Well, what has been your favorite part about Weber Chapel, I guess? I've already kind of covered it, but what is it in general? Is it like the part where all the students come in? Is it like one room in the building?
Sure. Well, my favorite part of Weber is the people that I encounter here, and just the great many creative endeavors and faith kind of nurturing things that happen here. I mean, that's what's most interesting of all to me. As a building, of course, it's really interesting in being a very kind of modern building. The ceiling of the main auditorium looks like an alien spaceship is kind of descending upon you and about to zap you up. But acoustically, it's really great and really interesting and useful in many, many ways.
Yeah, and I can't let you go without asking like this one last question. Weber Chapel has had a few changes and renovations over the past few years, and if you had an opportunity to be a part of that, like if you could change or add something to Weber Chapel, what would it be?
Well, two things. I would add more rooms, kind of multi-use rooms in the building. We have a shortage of such rooms in the campus generally, and for a building that is as big as this one, there really aren't that many rooms that can be used for multiple things such as what we're doing right now. So I would add more rooms like this. That would be really useful to me, and I know many others. And but the second, and more important than that even, is that this building is really terrible in terms of accessibility for people with ambulatory challenges. And so it was built before there was any awareness of those sorts of issues in terms of building construction. And so the bathrooms are really inaccessible, and many different other parts of the building are just simply inaccessible to people. So I hope that we can change some of those things. It's definitely on my agenda to do that in the coming years. But that is a definite shortfall of this building.
Well, as we celebrate the 50th anniversary of Weber Chapel, I want to thank you on behalf just for coming out and taking part in this interview.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Alrighty.
As we learned from Scott's perspective, Weber Chapel is more than a traditional church. To some, it is the quintessential home, welcoming people from all walks and backgrounds. And the melodious 6 o'clock chimes are a reminder that our home at Weber Chapel is never far away.